Welcome to Hawthorne. I'm Julian Slowik, and tonight it'll be our pleasure to feed you.
Hi.
A man chooses.
My victim. Okay. It's Doug.
2022 was a great year for movies. We got some awesome characters, scenes, but the focus of today's video is, of course, villains. The year had some great antagonists for sure, from the new adaptations of classic characters to new complex villains, one of my favorites being Chef Slowik from The Menu. Welcome back to Villain Review, and today I will be analyzing Julian Slowik and giving him a number 1 out of 10. If you think the video's good, like it, subscribe. I'm a small channel, help me out. Also make sure you stick around until the end of the video to find out who next week's villain's gonna be.
And I've been fooled in trying to satisfy people who can never be satisfied.
A lot of times with villains, the lack of backstory often leads their motivation shrouded in mystery, and sometimes that's incredibly effective. Another 2022 villain, the Grabber, comes to mind as an awesome example of that. Other villains fully flesh out their backstories, and while sometimes it adds more depth to the character, I know some people prefer the mysterious nature in their villains. Chef Slowik hits a great medium here because he's mysterious, but we get just enough backstory to make us understand him in a way that's relevant to the story. The base of Slowik's story is that he started off as a simple fry cook, making the best burgers he could for ordinary people to enjoy in their daily lives. Throughout the years, he'd rise up in the industry thanks to the massive talent he had and become the head of Hawthorne, an exclusive restaurant on a private island for only the richest and most distinguished guests. The passion he once had for cooking burgers was gone, the passion for making people happy. The only guest he ever had now being more concerned with the exclusivity and clout of the restaurant itself. They didn't appreciate him, his meals, or his art anymore, and in order to make that more inspired again, Slowik plots a grand finale of a meal that will end with the death of himself, his chefs, and all the guests in attendance. The motivation is one that stands out immediately to me as being unique. A new take on a struggling artist, but this time someone who has already achieved all the success they could ever dream of. It's a reminder that success and money don't buy happiness, and that some creatives just want to create art to be appreciated. We get more bits and pieces of his past, as well as like the fact that he has an abusive father, that he was at one point married, but this info never shatters the overlaying veil of mystery surrounding Slowik. If you're going to make a villainous chef who plans on killing his guest, I think this is as believable a motive you could have given him, and I think the whole thing is executed perfectly.
We're all gonna die tonight. Isn't that right?
Ralph Fiennes is one of the best villain actors ever, but also just an amazing actor in general. The last villain of his I reviewed was Ramses from The Prince of Egypt, and I don't want to spoil it, but he got quite the favorable score, and he brings the same qualities to Slowik that he did to Ramses. Slowik is not a good person, and there's no mistake that the murderous chef is the film's villain, but he's played with such heartbreak you sympathize with him. By no means am I excusing his actions, but it's just sad to see a talent of this quality turn into the monster we see in the movie. The film calls itself a dark comedy, and oftentimes movies have a tough time balancing comedic tones with the high tension atmosphere that comes with the horror and thriller genre. I think The Menu pulls it off though, and Slowik is a great example of how they did it. In The Menu, no jokes are really made, but funny things happen. Slowik making one of his future murder victims a birthday cake, that's funny in the context of the movie because he's making one of his future murder victims a birthday cake. I also really love his relationship with Margot, and I find it to be the film's high point. Slowik sympathizes with Margot because she isn't like the other guests and doesn't believe she deserves the same fate as everyone else. Not that the rest of the guests deserve it, but for the most part, they're all pretty bad people. Slowik is killing them because he thinks they deserve it and because they represent the unappreciative clientele he's come to despise so much. Fiennes brings humanity to a monster and pulls off what I think all great villains should. He shows you why you shouldn't agree with him, but then helps you understand him to the point he doesn't seem unrealistic. The personality of Slowik is perfect for this movie's tone, and he's a perfect example of a talented man who's worn down by a society that doesn't appreciate him anymore.
It's not funny, lady. Jesus Christ.
It's all part of the menu.
Margot is presented as the main character of the story, and she's definitely the protagonist, seeing as she might be the only likable character here, but I'd argue this is Slowik's movie. He is the focal point of the film's plot, and it seems like every character, Margot included, revolve around him and the actions he takes. He's in so many scenes. His screen time might be the highest of any villain in 2022, aside from Pearl, who of course had a whole movie dedicated to her. Speaking of Pearl, I wouldn't be opposed to getting a story about Slowik's past, and I think there is a lot of potential in that story as well. Back to the menu, however, it's tough to pick out what scenes are the best, seeing as Slowik has just so many of them. And I think another measure of Slowik's quality is the fact that he keeps the movie entertaining while taking place in one room, most of the time just him interacting with his cooks and his guests. One scene in particular stands out to me though, and in fact, I'd say it's one of my favorite scenes of the entire year, and that's of course the film's ending. Throughout the entire film, Slowik has been making these high-class guest dishes that most people wouldn't even have heard of. They're abstract, pompous, extravagant, but the only normal person in the group, Margot, isn't really a fan. In one final attempt to escape, she plays to Slowik's heart and asks him to make her a cheeseburger, the thing she knows used to bring him passion. She asks him to not make it fancy and even challenges him, telling him she doesn't think he can do it. The score in this scene is beautiful, and we get a small glimpse into the man Slowik once was, a man who doesn't have a dozen chefs to help him, one person trying to make the best cheeseburger he can for someone to enjoy. Of course, the burger is amazing, and as Margot tells him that, you see the spark in Slowik. It's brief, but you see it, and he ends up letting her leave, almost as a thank you for helping him live his passion and feel inspired once more. It's the perfect way for the movie to end, and I can't understate just how good Ralph Fiennes is here. Truly an amazing performance in an amazing scene in an amazing movie.
And under he goes.
As easy as it might be to understand Slowik, it's also pretty easy to see that this guy is messed up, and he even calls himself a monster, but justifies his actions as pure. He's irredeemable, we're not rooting for him, because at the end of the day, he is trying to kill his guest, one of which is his mom. Throughout the whole movie, he does a lot of evil things, mainly in the form of torturing his guest psychologically. It's always crazy when Slowik does some insane, traumatizing thing, and then just moves on a few minutes later like nothing happened. He absolutely humiliates Tyler and tears him apart emotionally to the point where he ends up killing himself. Some might argue that he had it coming because Tyler isn't a good dude either, but still. Another point in this movie I'd like to point out is when the Coast Guard comes in and everyone thinks they're going to be saved, until it turns out he's just one of Slowik's chefs in disguise. The demonstration is explained to be a lesson in teamwork, but it's so much more sadistic than that. It gives all the guests hope that they're going to escape, when in reality, it's just some skit they're putting on. He tried to force himself on one of his chefs, he makes the men guests run for their lives in another twisted game, and this is all needed to add intimidation to the character. He has to be scary, and thanks to the evil deeds and again fine performance, he is indeed scary.
I haven't desired to cook for someone in ages. And one does miss that feeling.
Slowik's origin and motivation are tied into the story beautifully, and they add to his complexity, but there's still a level of mystery to him. His personality dips into a bit of every character trait, from scary, sympathetic, and much more, all topped off by an amazing performance. He absolutely steals the movie and makes every second as intimidating as it is intriguing. I'm going to give Chef Slowik a 9. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure you subscribe because I make a new villain review every single Monday. Next week's being the wolf from Puss in Boots, so that's going to be sick. You're going to want to see that.